10%.
10% for Vermont.
Oh yeah, and then
yes.
in finance, you saw us in finance for climate super fund. So you're doing all the things. We appreciate it. Good morning.
And
It is
investment.
Friday, March 22nd in Senate Economic Development, Housing and General Affairs. We are taking up baby bonds once again. I don't know what the committee's recollection is, but I was worried that, you know, I was out there sort of talking about the concept and we hadn't had a full reckoning with it in here. And I could be wrong. I just didn't think we'd taken up the subject with the treasurer fully in here.
Not this year.
Okay, because I thought you had said like, oh, I thought we already did.
I said that.
Oh,
I mean,
okay.
I thought we already did it,
Well,
but,
we passed.
but I'm not.
We
Yeah,
did. We
I thought-
passed.
No, we passed Vermont Saves last year.
That we haven't done baby bonds.
Yes,
So is the house
different
set?
stage of life, different
Sorry.
stage of life.
Is the house set?
We don't know the path for this bill, but I figured because it's a valuable economic concept and whether it passes this year or we bring it up again next year, I wanted people to be conversant in it because our wonderful treasurer is traveling the state talking about it.
Yeah.
Several other states are looking at it. So I just wanted to make sure I'm not out there talking about something that the rest of the committee hasn't had a chance to digest.
Well, we could.
Thank you. We have a bill.
Yeah,
We do have a bill.
so we could attach it to something if you felt.
We could, but it costs money and
It's a tough year.
well,
for
I
Vermont.
think the treasurer's found a really valid funding source for it that he should have some say in. But it's unclaimed property and appropriations is probably going to book as much money as they can from anywhere they can. And none of us in this room or on Zoom have a full authority over those decisions. So we're gonna understand the concept and see how far we can get this year. Thank you, treasurer.
Well, thank you very much, Chair, and thank you to the committee. I think we've had conversations one-on-one with everybody in Senate Economic Development about baby bonds at one point, but it was probably pre-2004. So maybe I'll just lay out sort of the basic framework for everyone's recollection. But our decision was to suggest that a bill follow the Connecticut model that was passed last year and implemented and is now basically about 7 or 8 months into operation. So under that bill, and as the Vermont bill is written, $3,200 would be set aside for every child born on Medicaid. That's Dr. Dinosaur. And in Vermont currently, there are about 37% of all births are born on Dr. Dinosaur, and it equates to about 2,000 births a year. So that $3,200 would be set aside. It would be invested by the treasurer's office in sort of a long-term investment portfolio. And then when those individuals reach the age of 18 through the age of 30, they would be able to claim their baby bond to what it has grown to at that time. So if it's age 18, the estimate is that it would be like about $12,000, give or take. If they wait to the age of 30, it would be more like $24,000. And then those dollars can only be used for very specific wealth generating activities. So buying a home in Vermont, starting a business or investing in a business in Vermont, rolling the money over into a retirement account or higher education or job training. So you have to be a resident of Vermont at the time that you claim your baby bond. You have to originally, that eligibility criteria is that you're originally born on Dr. Dinosaur. So I'll talk about the 3 goals that we're trying to achieve, but just one thing to point out around the administrative piece, it's a relatively low administrative burden because we already have a state eligibility criteria that's being determined. We are piggybacking on that eligibility determination that's already been made. And then it just comes down to ensuring that when the person claims their baby bond, it is in fact the person that it's owed to, which is the kind of work our unclaimed property division does. Quite frequently we have thousands and thousands of claims that we pay every year, really high dollar claims oftentimes as well. So that's something that we do with great frequency and sort of understand how to verify and get money back to people. And then the other piece of the administrative oversight. Oh yeah.
Yeah, Mike, we know this is gonna cost us roughly at this at this proposal level, we know this is gonna cost us about 6.4 million a year, let's say, just on average. What are we leveraging for future savings? What are we proposing that this will save us down the line? Because this is a huge investment in trying to turn the ship on generational poverty, on trauma, on all sorts of things. And so this is designed in part to help and redirect lives, but also to save us money as a state. What is the guesstimate on the savings?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, Senator
Well,
Clarkson.
And
No, just
I
to-
reason I asked is we sold pre-K on the fact that we were gonna save. We sold universal pre-K on the
Right.
basis that we were gonna save 17 million a year in corrections. Just saying.
Right. So if you think of, I mean, the one thing you can think of just as the direct expanded benefit is that 6 million every year. And this is assuming that the child takes the money at age 18. Every single child takes it at 18, and not everyone will. But that 6 million that's set aside will grow to 22 million or so. So just the impact of that 6 million in year one will grow to over $20 million of impact by the time that that age of children are ready to claim their baby bond. So it could end up being 30 or 40 million dollars of impact. So just you'll have an outsized impact by setting that money aside now in terms of its future impact. And then what does it have as in terms of an impact on those individuals' lives? I mean, I do think it will have a significant economic value, because it means the difference between someone, you know, having no debt at all when they graduate from college, or having debt and paying thousands of dollars of interest. It means someone owning a home and getting tens of thousands of dollars of, you know, equity and appreciation rather than paying rent. It could mean somebody investing in a business, and, you know, that business being quite successful, and again, tens of thousands of dollars. And so I think
There's also tax value there as well. You're putting, in fact, we had a conversation, Jenna's Promise on Monday in Loyal County, and as Greg Tatro said, well, no matter what, they have to be a Vermont resident when they take their money. So they are very likely putting tax value back into the economy and putting that money back into the economy. So
Okay, a couple questions. The funds are already being put into the general fund, right?
Right.
Every year. So we're taking 6 million off the top of the general fund.
well,
Well,
the money.
the unclaimed property piece and.
Well, the unclaimed property goes into the general fund. It's there this year. If we dedicate $6 million, that means a year like this year.
Right,
Then
not
that's
all of it right as we draft the budget, and I think this is the helpful distinction for the treasurer to make about how the calculations are made and how the money gets transferred.
So
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's wrong, I think it's just, there's more to consider in terms of, there's an initial estimate the treasurer gives that's booked in the budget, and then there's often more that comes in.
Yeah, that's right, Chair. You know, last year is a good example. You know, last year there was $2.5 million booked in the budget. And then I believe before May, we were able to say, you know, you can move that up to 4 million or so. And that was sort of the estimate in the budget. But then as all of the monies came into us for that year, all the sort of the revenues got turned over. And as we closed out all the claims that were paid out, we realized about 14 million had come in, and about, you know, 3.8 million or so had been paid out. And so the total number ended up being about 10.5 million that we turned over to the general fund. So that last year just so happened to be a $6 million, you know, $6.5 million more than was booked in the budget by the end of the budget process. But that was even an increase from the beginning. So this year in the budget, it's 3.5 million is booked into the budget. We won't know the final numbers until May or June, and then it takes us a little while to sort of close out the books. But the trend in unclaimed property has been that the revenues have been going up. They've been going up for the last.
Mike, we're losing your audio.
Yeah, sorry, the F-35s are.
No.
No.
We were
Really low.
when we were on Zoom remote, and Senator Wyeth.
Yes, even in
had to
Williston.
stop the
Yeah.
meeting until the planes went over. She must be right on the runway, because they were there.
We're pretty close in Winooski.
Yeah.
So the revenues have continued to go up over the last 2 decades. They've gone up like 79%. So the trend on unclaimed property is the revenue is stable and growing. And then the claims and the monies we've paid out, they've also gone up, but they've only gone up like 29, 30%. So there's a growing gap in terms of the revenue. So if we were to fund it this year, we wouldn't have a budgetary impact on the 2025 budget as proposed, because we're suggesting sort of this excess money. And I guess the only other point I would make about why we suggested the unclaimed property fund is that, there are these budgetary challenges of predicting the amount of money, year over year, from January when the budget's presented to May to July to when we close it out in the fall. But for baby bonds, that doesn't matter because we're investing long term, over 18 or potentially up to 30 years. So as long as we get the money into the trust fund in a relatively, quick period of time so we can start investing it, those sort of monthly or yearly sort of calculations don't quite matter so much.
I've got one more.
Mhm.
Why are we zeroing in on children porn on Dr. Dinosaur? I consider political pushback. There are an awful lot of middle-class people right now just burdened. They can't even think about buying a house. They're having trouble paying rent because of college loans. That's a national problem. And never mind coming down with a down payment on a house.
Hmm.
I can see there'll be some pretty angry people if we say we're going to pay off the college loans and come up with a down payment for lower class children, and the middle class, which is really struggling,
Well,
is.
Well, let's hear the treasurer's statement.
Yeah.
We all have some, I mean, I guess I would say sometimes it's helpful to start somewhere and say, this is working and it's great, and we should universalize this
if it's
more.
working, we can grow it.
Right.
And there's a
Yeah.
difference between.
Yeah,
that's-
yeah.
I think that's all correct. And, there's really sort of two practical reasons, like philosophically, and we've had this question asked on the House side. Philosophically, we have no objection to having it be a broader, collection of individuals. Basically, however you can identify a group of families or children who don't have the personal or family resources to help them get, a step forward in this economy, would benefit from this kind of program. From a practical standpoint, obviously, if you expand the pool of eligibility, then it will cost more money. So that was just one, one sort of practical decision on our end, was to try to come with something that would have a revenue stream that we thought we could cover from this unclaimed property fund. The other thing that is, again, just a practical consideration is by tying it to Dr. Dinosaur, there's already been an administrative determination about eligibility made. So we don't have to hire a team of folks to determine eligibility. That's something that's been done by another state agency. So we really just have to worry about the back end of the administration, which is ensuring that that baby bond actually does belong to you, and then ensuring that we get that money to one of the approved sources. So it really cuts down on the administrative piece. So those are the sort of the two practical reasons, but again, no philosophical difference as to expanding it.
Yeah, Senator Brock.
Treasurer Pisha spoke with me some months ago as this program was being developed. And at that time, and the more I've thought about it, probably the stronger I feel about it right now, is I'm concerned about giving away money to people with the assumption that they're going to be in a certain economic situation 25 years from now. And second, giving away money, period. That doesn't solve or deal with a specific current need, such as poverty, such as the inability to feed themselves, the inability to get medical care, et cetera, to a particular group of people, and excluding the children of Vermont taxpayers who are paying for all of this. I find that offensive. And I'm very concerned about it and very much opposed to this kind of a really tax giveaway that is reducing money going into the general fund and is adverse to those people who are paying the bills and paying the taxes right now that support things like Dr. Dinosaur and the like. I think that there will be, and as we discuss it, I think considerable pushback from an awful lot of Vermonters who are concerned, why aren't you doing this for my kids? Why are you doing it for somebody else's kids? X number of years in the future. And I have no way to know that one of their parents will hit the lottery or actually get a job so that they don't need government support. 2 years from now, 3 years from now, 5 years from now, or 20 years from now.
So I will say this, the treasurer made a proposal that kept it pretty simple, as other states are looking at, as, you know, has been proposed. We could always make it more detailed. The money has to be spent in Vermont, or, you know, you do another income check at a certain time. We have one of the kind of most ironclad class systems in the world. It is, I think what we find is that it's very hard for people born into poverty to move out of that by the time they're in their early 20s. If we find a whole lot of that, because we'd have much better data, we'd have, you know, a lot more information on these kids, which Connecticut will have in, you know, 15 years or what have you. That could be a good problem. And one thing I would say is, I doubt this would happen just over 18 years, but what we're also saying to those kids is, we believe in you. And usually there's nothing that makes someone economically hopeful if their parents can't set aside money for them, right?
Well, the parents right now are setting aside every cent they have in order to survive because they've worked hard.
Yeah.
They have a job. They're not on poverty. They're not receiving government assistance, and they put away whatever they have for their kids.
But someone could be
Doesn't
working
that
hard
set
and be on
a
Dr.
kind-
Dinosaur.
But doesn't that create the kind of atmosphere and that kids learn from, and they see doing the right thing, they see the results of the hard work their parents have on the one hand, and these are the people who are paying the taxes that ultimately allow programs like this to exist. And as I say, I strongly the notion of giving money to one group of kids now for something far in the future and not for the kids of the people who are paying the bills here.
So you would change the income eligibility. You would use a different threshold.
Well, I think
Just
part of this is
one
we're solving.
clarification.
And so the problem, a problem clearly stated is a problem half solved. The problem we're trying to solve is generational poverty. How do we break that cycle? A taxpayer should also be concerned about the growth in state spending. Social services being a huge component of
Social
that.
services being
So-
part of it, and part of the money we're talking about here is state spending. You
The
can call it what
problem
you
we are
want,
trying
of
to-
money that is
But
not
it benefits
decided
from
and not
compound
used.
interest.
But that's what you're doing.
It is money that is presently going into the general fund. And if this is a dedicated every year, will be $6 million that the general fund doesn't have to pay other things. I'm not sure about generational poverty. But we're paying, if this were a different situation, if this were back in the 60s where middle-class kids could afford to go to college. My tuition was $700 a semester, okay? This isn't. Right now, we have the majority of students. You have to be very wealthy to be able to pay for college tuition and come out. We've got a whole generation of people in their late 20s, 30s that can't pay off their college. They're working at good jobs. They can't pay for their college. They can't even think about saving money for a home. I think under those circumstances, to give one group of students something and others nothing. I mean, the one complaint I've ever had about BSAC is poor kids get the scholarships, middle class people just get, some grants and middle class people are paying in.
They're the ones that are getting the debt.
Yeah, and VSAC is probably one of the most beloved institutions in the state. I don't want to see us in trying to do a good thing end up causing more social disruption than we have to. And maybe, maybe we could put money into some kind of we looked at years ago in here, Modeling Maine, who has, I think you get money when you hit college age. They put like $200 aside and they'd get, but what they had to capitalize it was, what is the big shoe company in Maine, who capitalized the program.
Mhm.
And we couldn't find that capital here, but we did a lot of work on that. So that every kid would have a savings when it came to.
I'm not sure if if the treasurer fully articulated the unclaimed property transfer piece. Many treasurers have a lot more control over what happens with unclaimed property. It's essentially, a transfer of people's private winnings or something that they never claimed, probably passed away at this point. And
Including gift.
we put it in the general fund based on assumptions about how healthy it will be and how much money is coming in. With generational shifts right now, we have a lot of young people who are going to grow up without a transfer of wealth from their parents. So
I'm having trouble with that. My parents were nice, solid, middle class. When my mother died, I think we all got like $1,000. I don't call that a transfer of wealth. If you own a corporation, my father was the head of IBM, then I would get generational wealth.
how much
don't
did
have-
college cost at that time? How much did it cost to buy that?
When my mother died was 6 years ago. So college cost about what it costs now. Most parents don't die and leave generational wealth. What is generational wealth? Depending on
A
how.
house, or, I think
Well,
that's a
if I
good
end up in
question.
a nursing home, the state has my house.
Yeah, land, a house, and money, you're right, all of those are
Mhm.
generational wealth.
I would like to get some information on,
there's less of that.
there's a
Yeah,
lot less
yeah,
of that. I
yeah.
mean,
Do we actually have statistics on that?
That would
I'd
be
like to know,
No,
I'm
but-
not sure we all need to be on the same page with the facts. about
Yeah.
that. So, I mean, that's easy.
There's article after article coming out about boomers having more wealth than any other generation has had before, a concentrated amount of that.
So you feel
It's
that-
all about to transfer to millennials, but very specific group of millennials. That's the problem. There are
I
fewer
think there's an
transfers of
awful
wealth.
lot of generalizations going on here. I think
Happy
we
to find an
get
article.
to the
Data.
As a group, yes.
It's just-
The generation still had unions, they got paid well, paid a living wage. They also had 6 and 7 kids that they had to pay for and send to college.
So it sounds like we're asking the treasurer for more information to help us because when we looked at Vermont Saves, we had a lot of information about who's able to save, who's not. The wealth gap in this country is huge. The wealth gap in Vermont is huge. We have seniors on a huge bell curve where some retire with immense wealth and some are incredibly poverty stricken. And there's not a lot of folks in between. That's what we've always known on Ways and Means and Finance. So let's look at the data.
Actually, in finance, I don't know that we've ever had those statistics.
Oh, we
I
did
would
Ways
like-
and Means
In
every
ways
year.
and means we
Yeah.
talk about
Oh,
it all
Ways
the
and
time.
Means, okay, I've never been on Ways and Means. We have not had that discussion.
Okay.
I don't like making generalizations about my generation that I don't see backed up in my friends, in the people I went to school with.
Okay, well then let's look at the data.
Yeah,
We include it all the time.
And the data in Vermont.
So
Yeah.
there is data on this,
Yeah.
and I
Good,
would,
that's kind of-
I would get it.
Okay,
And
We have another witness for this topic as well, but continue
Oh,
your sentence.
That's
Mr.
right. No, I was just saying, let's get the name.
Yes,
Because it's not
so-
like we need to.
So, Mr. Treasurer, I think this was valuable so that you can compile
Yeah.
some data like we did with Vermont Saves, which was very helpful about, and really, I think, let's say we were talking about any- child.
This is my son's unclaimed $7 that he left in his savings account when he was a paper boy and never claimed. That's, you may have some lottery winnings that don't get claimed, not too many, I would imagine. But most of it is small amounts of money in bank accounts. This is not coming from the boomer generation. This is probably coming from people like my son who moved off out of state and left $7 in his.
The treasurer can also get us some information about the inputs to unclaimed property as well. And that it's growing because people
Why?
tend not to claim
Why
it.
is it, why?
You know, that is
And I think we have a treasurer who's done a lot to actually find
Educate.
people.
Yes, and so did Beth. I mean, we've done a lot to educate the public that it exists, the unclaimed
Well,
property. I'm stunned it's
we
going
put
there.
unclaimed gift certificates in there that, and I was on here when we did that because lots of times people get gift certificates and they never claim them in, which,
I thought the stores got to keep that money, no?
no,
No.
not
Good for
anymore,
Vermont.
not anymore,
We
no.
claim-
Good job.
Yeah.
I would like to bring Wei Wei Wong into the conversation, who has been, so Mr. Treasurer, do you have to go?
I do have to go, unfortunately, but thank you very much for your time this morning.
Yeah,
Yes,
thank
and then
you.
we continued, so we'll look at some data.
Have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Hello, Wei Wei, thanks so much for
Hi.
joining us. This is the first time you've been in our committee this year, did I make that up?
I think I was briefly in January, but that was so early on.
Okay, great. And we deeply appreciate the work of the Vermont Professionals of Color Network. And actually, I would say Wei Wei has, is learning about this issue alongside many of us, but has taken the initiative in her busy schedule to go to 2 different events on baby bonds. And so when she drove all the way out in a snowstorm to Lamoille County on Monday, I asked if she wanted to share some thoughts on how this might benefit people in her network.
Yeah, thank you so much, Madam Chair, and for all the senators for having me here today. So I really wanted to come in because the more I learn about it, the more I'm interested in this opportunity, because thinking about BIPOC-owned businesses, Black, Indigenous, people of color-owned businesses, and their need for capital in order to get businesses started up, along with the ability to purchase homes, the ability to go to school. But I wanted to really draw attention to the fact about how this benefits the community of color specifically. So, and today I kind of wanted to really touch on how it would benefit business owners, folks who want to be starting businesses. As you know, I think last time I was there, I gave you all the report that we had published last October. And I wanted to bring up a couple of quotes from the focus groups that we ran. So there was one individual who said, I'm sorry, that is not the quote that I wanted. I apologize. A lot of us do not have grandparents that left us $100,000 to use as startup money. We are using money from back pockets, savings, and under the couch. So I'm really thinking about how baby bonds can benefit the community of color in the future. A lot of our members are having to take out loans, scrapping for grant dollars, but a lot of BIPOC-owned businesses are actually restaurants or other retail businesses that are at relatively high risk for investors. So they're not always able to get the funding that they need. And I was looking through, and I can dig into this a little bit more about the impact factor, the multiplier effect, when it comes to how minority and BIPOC-owned businesses have an impact on local economy. And I cannot find the figure. I have it in one of my journal articles from a long time ago, but the impact factor, the economic impact. So the number of dollars that stay locally in the economy compared to going out of state for BIPOC owned businesses is significantly higher than white owned businesses generally. And I'm very happy to go find that number after this call. But what I did find just in my really general search is that BIPOC owned businesses, this is from a Forbes article, offered their corporate partners year-over-year cost savings of 8.5%, which is considerably more than the 3 to 7% annual procurement savings that most organizations realize. And this is because a lot of corporations spend their money with outside, out-of-state suppliers. Something else I found was in terms of local economic returns from locally owned businesses versus chain businesses, it is significant. So if purchasing from a chain retailer, the local economy only sees about 13.6% of those dollars back versus locally owned businesses, about 48% of those dollars back circulating into the local economy. So when I'm thinking about the way that baby bonds can really impact Vermont as a whole, yes, we are investing a lot of money up front into these children. And also we're getting a lot of money back because part of the purpose of this opportunity is so that these kids can, as they grow up, will stay in Vermont, reinvest to build businesses, to purchase homes, to go to school, hopefully here in Vermont or elsewhere, and also to bring back their talents to this community. And I think I don't remember if this was mentioned here today, but it's really about making sure that the state is telling these kids, we want to support you. We want you here as a community member. And there's so many initiatives that are happening here who, with the purpose of keeping these children anchored to the community, to say, yes, you are a big part of who we are as a state, and you are the future of the state. And from day one, this is the way to do it. And then thinking about so many of the community of color, building a business is a way to generate generational wealth, because that's not typically what is, working for other companies might not be the way to do it. So this is a great way for people to build generational wealth and to have that head start of $20,000, let's say, to be able to start a business and not to have to go into debt, because debt is the thing that gets all of us. That would have a huge impact, not only on the individual, but economically for the local economy and also for Vermont as a whole.
Mhm.
So
I think that was incredibly well said. Yeah, and I think, it's if anyone who's eligible for Dr. Dinosaur, is probably facing these same concerns about taking on debt, what their children will do in the future. But we know that there's just a huge wealth gap in this country for certain communities, and certainly even people who might have had economic value in another country are now coming here and starting over, and they were a doctor somewhere else and now they're working at a gas station or as a cab driver and just don't have that the value to show for all of their hard work that they had somewhere else.
exactly. And, I think about when my father was working at the University of Vermont as a professor, and the custodian in his building was from Vietnam. He is a refugee with his family. And he had been a school principal and high-level administrator back in Vietnam. And he was working as a custodian locally to be able to put his 5 kids to school for free. If they had, and a lot, not all of them, but some of them were born in the States. If they had been born here with this baby bonds opportunity, they could have had more options. UVM is a great school, don't get me wrong. They would have had other options, and he would not necessarily have had to stay in that position because he had other skills that he wanted to be able to use locally, right? So this gives so many people that opportunity. I appreciate you bring that up. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I also think we need to, again, to go back. What's the problem we're trying to solve? And for me, breaking, generational poverty. That is a huge cost emotionally, personally, and to the state. And if we can get a handle on what poverty actually costs the state at the moment
Mhm.
and figure out how this would impact it, I think you could sell this in a heartbeat. And but I think that problem statement needs to be
Mhm.
clearly said,
Mhm.
dollars need to be attached to it. And we need to all be open to the reality of that problem and its financial impact and personal impact on this state.
Yeah, and
I-
I will tell you that so when I testified over the last summer for the flood testimony, I brought up the economic impact of BIPOC owned businesses in the state. And right now, BIPOC owned businesses contribute to over $1 billion to the Vermont
Wow.
economy. Over $1 billion. And in Washington County alone, $92 million a year. And that is from, the existing businesses. And we know that over the COVID period, a lot of BIPOC folks left either gig economies or professional jobs and started their own businesses. So that data is based on the ACS 5-year, and that's just an estimate from 2021. So a lot of businesses have been built since then. I've been working with
Revenue,
40 businesses alone that have been developed over the last, year or two, right? So there are a lot of new BIPOC owned businesses that have started up. So imagine the economic impact of that on the state. So there's a lot of movement happening in that way. And if we can support these businesses, and not just BIPOC owned businesses all over the state, we are a state of mom and pop small businesses. This can really support those opportunities in more rural areas, in the Northeast Kingdom, in Orange County, in Southern Vermont, in Bennington County. There are a lot of businesses that are trying to start up. So there is a significant economic impact for the state.
Sam.
No, the majority of poverty, generational poverty in Vermont is white, mostly French Canadian Abenaki people. They have been overlooked for years, and I think you can help with that.
Mhm.
But right now, we have an entire generation of middle class people who cannot afford the same thing. And if you could help them, maybe they would have a greater impact.
Mhm.
I just think that to do this at a time when the middle class young people are struggling to do that, is going to create a lot of pushback. And I would like to hear from the Appropriations Committee what they would have to cut if they can take $6 million out of the budget.
Mhm.
Because this is $6 million off the top of the budget.
So the treasurer has not structured it that way. Every year he says the amount that he believes can safely go into the
Okay. What if
budget.
he doesn't have 6 million left over? What
Then
if
it would impact the program, not the budget.
it would impact
Yes.
the program?
He's had a surplus from everything that he has proposed each
Okay,
year.
but this year, we're looking at cutting mental health services.
Right, and that's why it
trying to
might not
cut the
pass
people
this
we
year.
had in yesterday,
Yes, yeah,
the home care workers, Jane
Yeah.
is trying to find enough money to get them
right.
a raise. If we could use all of that money
Mhm.
in there
Mhm.
this year. And I think if you start cutting programs which will benefit these people
Right.
before they get to college,
I think I said this before you got in here, but we're not looking to pass this out in its current form this year. And the decision does rest with appropriations that they
Does.
want as much as the unclaimed property money as they can have.
Okay.
We are setting this conversation up for future years, and this Senator Kitchell is okay with that general conversation. We wouldn't
You could have.
propose something to her that costs money this year.
So,
yeah.
I think we need to develop the narrative.
Yes, yeah,
And we need to develop and explore all the financial
Mhm.
aspects of it. And I think in order for us to set this up for a win-win,
Mhm.
we're gonna need to do a lot more work and understand what
Right.
its impact would be.
Right, some of the most helpful thought partners have been Treasurer Russell, the Connecticut treasurer who passed this a few
But
years
the
ago.
Connecticut is one of the wealthiest states in the country. All the hedge fund people live in
He's
Connecticut.
still using unclaimed property, and
use-
I'm sure that everyone's having budget problems. So I mean, still, when they talk about the structure and who it could help, he has a lot of good data. Yeah.
And just so you all know, I am working with the treasurer and his office to have a webinar or more of a forum for the Vermont Professionals of Color community, to have that conversation for folks to learn about what baby bonds are and for them to ask questions about how this would impact how they could use this funding. So that's happening April 9th, I believe. That's the current schedule. And so I'm very happy to report back after that what the questions are. I do think that one of the things that the senator brought up of I'm worried about the what is it called? The gap, like falling into, gosh, I
Yes.
forget the
There's the
folks who are
benefits.
not eligible but fall within that gap. And those children who would also fall within that gap, to the senator's point of, there are a lot of Abenaki kids and white children and also BIPOC children who fall within that gap, and not being able to receive something in this way that would really benefit them. So I'm
Right.
definitely curious about that as well. So that is
Yeah.
one of the points of concern.
37% of the kids born are born on Dr. Dinosaur. That,
Yeah.
that's a big,
And I think
That's sobering.
that is
Yeah.
sobering.
That's because the middle class is not having children. Our birth rate is the
No.
lowest in the country.
It's also because Dr. Dinosaur goes up to,
Well,
it includes more than just
350%
kids in poverty.
That's why we
Yeah.
need
Yeah.
data.
Yeah.
Showing
So we'll get
what
the
these numbers
we'll
are.
get the
Because
data.
I could
Yeah.
be a single mother, have a baby on Dr. Dinosaur, then go on to get my PhD and become a corporate executive. That's the kind of thing that will cause it to hit the fan when you've got a bunch of middle class kids who can't afford to
Right.
go to college and some corporate
Right.
get it.
This is not lost on us, and we're gonna look at that gap as well, because as the treasurer said, he picked a figure at 350% of federal poverty that already is measured within the state. There may be other gaps that we filled, like the childcare gap, that we want to talk about in this conversation. So again, the treasurer brings us a proposal, we work on it. It's probably not going to live in anything close to its current form this year. We're starting a big conversation about a big social policy to give a boost to families who can't save.
And if I could just point out a couple of other items within the bill as it exists. I love the piece about outreach and making sure that there is outreach going out. VTPOC is very happy to contribute to that if this passes. I also wanted to point out there was a line about termination of the program. And if the program was to be terminated, I'd be curious. The language is a little bit unclear because it seems like the children who would have dollars already in the program, that would go back to the state. So I would be concerned about that. And let's see. Yeah, and just generally, I appreciate what is written in there, and to be mindful of maintenance of the program and commitment to outreach to historically excluded communities, really making sure that the partners who are working on this, the state working on this, it's really far reaching, making sure that people are aware and
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's a great point, and what I've seen in other states where treasurers of all backgrounds use their unclaimed property for different programs is that kicks in the kind of human nature of like, hey, do I have unclaimed property? Like, are they giving away my money? And more people tend to look for unclaimed property that they might have. So it becomes outreach on both fronts a lot of times.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, Wei. As always, you do such great work and you do homework to make sure you're offering us really valuable testimony, and thanks for all your work to support flood victims and businesses impacted by the flood, since that's ongoing. Just thank you for everything that your organization's doing.
Thank you all
Thanks.
so much for having me. And I'm happy to look into more data. I'll find the economic impact multiplier effect number for you. So
Yeah, I think just at the beginning of this conversation, and I think what this conversation has helped articulate is what we need to have in place for us to really have an
Mhm.
informed conversation.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's helpful. Thank you.
Thanks,
great. Thank you
Wei.
so much for having me.
I imagine you're Kevin.
Kevin Gresham,
Okay.
Kevin,
I
our
think-
OPR man.
Yes, I haven't met you. I don't think OPR's been in this committee since it was, why am I blanking?
And
No, we just haven't met Kevin yet. We haven't had, Kevin assumed the reins last.
And
Last
who,
March.
why am I blanking on who was there? Well, Lauren Hibbert
Lauren, and so Lauren was elevated
to,
deputy
Deputy
secretary.
secretary.
oh, she's deputy secretary. Oh, great. Okay. Are
And
there
I
multiple
just-
deputy secretary?
and I just lost my deputy to the state house. And
Oh,
right.
yeah.
Right.
We still lag at the back.
Yeah,
We
she
had
was
her
ours first. I mean, she was to London anyway. but,
Hi, Lauren.
Good morning, all.
Hi,
It's good to see
morning.
you.
So a subject that has been under hot debate in this committee in past years, we want to get an update, and I understand maybe April 1st, there's a deadline looming where the contractor registry is no longer optional, it is required.
Required.
So we wanted to take some time to see what we can do to be helpful, Senator.
I'm hiring a contractor. I went to look him up and I could not find a list, on
on the OPR.
the OPM, yeah.
Lauren, can you share your screen and kind of share with us what the contractor registry looks like right now?
Yeah,
And how you
and
get
how
to
we-
it,
How we
yeah.
get to it.
Because we wanna share the
You should know,
website.
I went to,
Absolutely.
will this tell me where to go?
Yep.
It's only,
Oh, thank you.
it's only residential.
We should all run and
Business.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's businesses and individuals who should register. I can
Okay.
actually leave you a proof of these for you. if you want.
Oh, look.
Oh,
What?
yeah, I'm actually going to a town
Okay,
meeting
I'll-
tomorrow.
that's what I
I'll take,
did.
We've
I'll
sent
take
these.
more.
I'll talk about, you
Okay.
can have these.
That's it.
Okay, so
Yes, and I wanna note with Magali, our agenda is still incorrect. Just so people know, the floor is at 10:30, and I'm saying this for anybody watching our agenda
Oh,
at
right.
home. I don't know why this hasn't been updated, but we're gonna have just 10-15 minutes with Julie Lowell from Public Assets, and we've moved DLL to next week, so I
Okay,
just wanna note that for people,
So
Magali, the
where
agenda's
do I
still
get on
incorrect.
here? I think I hit on professional, and that got me into every profession.
No one's coming
There-
in.
there's a
Sorry,
high contract, residential
Well,
contract.
those are like that.
This
Okay.
actually.
Will take me there.
So,
I don't wanna, okay, so anyhow, we're gonna start from, you turn on your computer.
let's
and you go to
introduce
the
ourselves
internet.
to Kevin.
Oh, okay.
So here we
Okay.
are, and we turn on our computer and we go to professions. Actually, we sorry, go back. We go to find a
Lauren, we
professional.
it would be helpful to introduce ourselves. I missed that
Oh, I'm
part.
sorry. I'm sorry. My name's
Hey.
Lauren Lehman. I'm thrown off a little bit. My name's Lauren Lehman, and I'm general counsel for the Office of Professional Regulation. And I work with Kevin.
And you've been there for a while?
Yes.
Yes, I've been with OPR since 2018. I started as a staff attorney. I've been general counsel for 2 years. I worked closely with Lauren Hibbert through the process of the Sunrise Review for this, as well as developing and throughout the legislative process. And I've helped implement the program with our staff and colleagues since it was passed in 2022. So I'm
Thank you.
happy to answer any
Thank you.
questions.
We'll come back to you. We'll go to our committee in a minute.
Yeah.
No, you're introducing yourself.
Oh, and Cummings, Chair Finance, I represent Washington District.
Kevin, we've met, Allison Clarkson, Windsor County District, and I've done, not at the beginning work with Kevin, but lots with Lauren around this very subject. And got this, carried this water on the floor
Yes.
and through Senate government operations.
Grateful for all of that. Senator Keisha Ron Hinsdale, I chair the committee. I represent Chittenden Southeast. And this is my 4th year on the committee, so I remember the long drawn out battles and conversations around this issue, but it's good to give this,
Yes.
our other committee members the opportunity to understand. Senator Brock is not here right now, but our ranking member and the Republican Minority Leader Program.
Oh, yeah, I forgot to say, I'm also the majority leader. So,
Yes.
orange.
And Senator Wendy Harrison, with Wyndham District down in Brattleboro, and, this is my first session. So this is new to me. I appreciate it.
This is my name is Kevin Rushing. I am the director of OPR. And you get to be the first, this is my first time testifying.
Great.
Great, and
You've testified in Senate Gov Ops, haven't you?
No, ma'am.
Oh, I thought it was
I-
Lauren brought you, but you
I
had.
sat with Lauren.
Okay.
Be introduced.
How great.
Well, so why don't we take one more step back, and since we have two members, at least one who was here for the general fight, but not in the committee, but a new member, if you could say why we created the contractor registry, we can help with that, but you know, what the problem is we were trying to solve, and the Secretary of State's office was very invested in this proposal as well.
So Lauren, you want me to start? Or you want to start off first?
Well, Kevin, we actually prepared some testimony. We submitted it in writing. Kevin, would you mind, for the new committees, I don't know, like Senator Clarkson and Senator Hinsdale, excuse me, you're familiar with OPR. But for Senator Harrison and Senator Cummings, would it be helpful for Kevin to just give a quick overview of OPR, and then we'll get into how we got to the
I have some bullets I just wanted to throw out
Okay,
to the
right,
committee, but I
right.
do appreciate the time to be able to testify in front
Right.
of you all.
And maybe, you know, how OPR interacts with our committee specifically, since it's usually around some new profession that we're regulating, like mixed martial arts or something.
Well, just to give you some
did that
background,
in SGL.
OPR is
That's where you.
oversees 51 professions. We don't do MDs, teachers, or attorneys.
Okay.
We pretty well cover pretty good gamut, 51 from nurses, mixed martial arts,
Realtors.
realtors, tattoo artists,
Therapists, I know.
therapists, correct.
Well, that's been also long conversations, massage therapist.
That's another, we do regulate that too. So we have 41 employees, and out of that, we have 9 licensing administrators who actually work physically with the people who apply online, who come into OPR. We have 9 investigators. These are criminal investigators that when we receive complaints, they come in, and I can walk you through that process too, as far as if somebody has an issue. We have inspectors in the field, and then on the other side of the house, we have general counsel, which is Lauren, and 2 other attorneys. We have a policy analyst who does a lot of our numbers. We have some IT, and of course, we have a paralegal. So,
And now you need a deputy director.
and we have appointed a deputy director, and I'm proud to say that Tara Grenier has been appointed as the new deputy, and it's a perfect match, perfect fit. She's moving right in behind Agatha, and we're working well together.
Great.
Do you still have boards?
Yes, ma'am. We have boards for the different professions. We also have what we call technical boards and advisory boards. And those boards, basically, the 2 different models are reflected in our statutes. So the statutes are in Title III, but the actual professions specific statutes are in Title 26. What I try to do when I give overviews to people coming to OPR, I want to be very concise about this. OPR is a public protection agency.
Yeah.
So we regulate, we monitor. So let's give an example. If somebody comes in with a complaint that the barber gave them a really bad haircut, that's not my concern. Your hair is going to grow out. You can,
Right.
But if the barber cuts you with scissors or a razor or something and did harm, we need to know about it. And then we have people, when you go into the OPR website, you can actually go into the profession, you can hit the click, you can hit the complaint, and then you can actually put in your information, the person who you're complaining about, what happened. And the more detail you can give the investigators, the better. And then our chief investigator, when these come into our system, Mike sits down and goes through these, and then we'll say whether they're going to be looked at or whether there's going to be sent out, there's not enough information here, more investigation. when we do an investigation, it's very thorough and very detailed. It's as if, I mean, our investigators are, some of them used to be with the Burlington Police, the state police. They're level 3 from the academy, so they completely know how to investigate crime. And they're excellent at it. And last year we had more than 800 complaints and we investigated 600. And I don't have the number for you, I'm sorry, as far as how many actually those were across the board.
Corroborated, yeah.
Right. We've also, OPR had to adjust last year in July with floods. And we worked with the governor's task force, with public safety folks, and trying to help them because we don't regulate plumbers and electricians. Public safety does that. But what we did is we tried to help public safety with their link on our website and their website. So people say, I need a plumber, I need a electrician. They could go to that also.
You know, that's a, man,
Yeah.
that's great that we're working with Mike to link those two, because as Ann, I mean, from the consumer's point of view, we want to make this as friendly and as useful to
Right.
the consumer who's exploring who to hire, and which goes to why we
So
did this.
I do want to do a time check. We have 15 minutes
Okay.
and let's jump to the importance of the contractor registry.
Right, and can I just say, for the main reason we did this is that this was one of the top 5 complaints with the Consumer
Yes.
Protection Division in the AG's office.
Yeah.
And it really, year after year, really called on us to do something.
And for significant amounts of money and hardship for people.
And we are one of the few states that do not license
Yeah.
contractors. So this was an attempt to do the lightest touch. They do, as Kevin will tell you, we do several layers of regulation over industry, over professions. This is the lightest touch we could have done, which was to register contractors.
Thank you.
Lauren, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, so thank you. So Lauren Lehman, again, General Counsel, OPR, for the record. So yes, in 2017, we did a Sunrise Review, which is an evaluation of whether a profession should be regulated, and it's governed by statute. And we have a directive that is no regulating a profession unless there's a potential harm to the public. And then if we decide to register, as Senator Clarkson said, or if we decide that there is a public harm or we find a public harm, the form of regulation needs to be the minimum necessary to protect against that harm. So after the Sunrise Review, based on review of the complaints to the Consumer Assistance Program that is jointly held in UVM and the AGO's office, we determined, and then the court systems and the et cetera, that there was a gap in protection for members of the public who are victims of fraud. Not quality of work, but pure fraud, homeowner fraud, where the consumer, the homeowner, could not find any recourse through the courts. And when you go through CAP, which is really a mediation program, if the contractor can't be found or is unwilling to engage in mediation, then there's no recourse for them. And then for folks who went through the courts, it was either very, very expensive, which you might pay attorney to do for a, if you had the money, or you were, even if you were able to afford it, you were often up against somebody who is judgment proof and couldn't pay any judgments or reimburse. So what OPR recommended at that point was we have those 3 different tools in our toolbox. Registration is mandatory, but you don't need any qualifications to obtain that registration. There's another form of regulation called a certification, which is voluntary, but requires qualifications. So our example is dietitians. Anybody in the world can give you dietary advice, but only certain people can be certified dietitians. They need to demonstrate qualifications, and then the public can say, well, I don't want dietary advice from my uncle. I want dietary advice from somebody who has qualifications and obtained a certification from the state. And then there's licensure, which is mandatory and requires qualifications. So OPR recommended a registration, light touch registration, without qualifications, mandatory for anybody who is providing residential contracting services to homeowners, and a certification option as well, which would be voluntary, but it would allow certain people who had an expertise in subspecialties related to residential contracting to be able to demonstrate that expertise and for the public to be able to identify folks who had an expertise in, say, energy efficiency building or roofing. So that went through 2 biennia of discussion and amendments and a veto and a override. And the sausage that came out was what we have now, which is a great bill. But it does have some significant loopholes a little bit. The threshold for registering is if you, a residential contractor, engage and enter into a contract with a homeowner for $10,000 or more in a year, you need to register. If you, as a contractor, only enter into contracts for $9,999 or less, you do not need to register with OPR. So it was a $10,000 threshold. And once registered, the registered contractors need to have a writing with the homeowner. So they need, with certain elements in it, a contract, and they need to have professional liability insurance. So that would go to addressing the potential for being judgment proof. It would document in writing what the agreement between the parties was to help obviate some of the eventual disagreements. And significantly, the registration very specifically, while subjecting contractors to unprofessional conduct, all those unprofessional conduct standards in our Title III, exempted contractors from being subject to a quality of work or competency standard that we apply to other professions. And this was also articulated in the statute that OPR's role here is to prosecute and enforce and regulate based on fraud. We don't do quality of work. So our investigators who are wonderful and excellent law enforcement officers and do not have the capacity to assess the quality of work in a residential building. They don't have training in the RBs. They don't have an understanding of, staircase safety. So really what our task is to prosecute, remove from licensure if necessary, sanction licenses if necessary for those folks who have engaged in fraud and to make the public aware of who has engaged in fraud. So that's what we've done. That's what we've set up in the last couple of years. And right now, I think you spoke about the lapse. Initially, the initial go live date was April 1st, 2023. You were required to register at that time, but we could not prosecute you for not registering at that time. As of April 1st this year, OPR can prosecute people for failing to register. So that becomes more of a mandatory requirement. And Kevin can describe, if you're interested, some of the outreach efforts that we've undertaken to get the word out about this requirement.
Wow, sharing the screen because I do want to get to us visualizing this, and we do have less than 10 minutes. So,
And how many have registered today? Because we actually a lot registered. And
As of today, we have 607 residential contractor businesses and 349 individual residential.
well, that's great because the other byproduct is a lot of people can't find a contractor. So hopefully it helps get them more business.
So we've definitely done some outreach.
Yeah.
As I said with the map, the thing about the map, once you get into it, and if you put your pointer over the name,
oh, here we are. Up on
it should say active, or if it has a little
Okay,
green
so-
bar, say active, that means we don't have anything against the contractor.
Yeah.
So if there's a red line, there's some kind of discipline involved, which red line means don't.
Don't proceed.
Oh, okay.
Good color choice.
Okay, so let's
Okay.
look at that.
Here
while
I
you're
can
talking.
find a professional.
Why don't you hit
So-
here, Lauren?
Yeah, so here I am. I'm going to zoom it up a little bit. So here we are on sos.vermont.gov/OPR. You can also go Secretary of State's and just click on professional regulation. There's 2 ways to find a professional. You can go right to find a professional and click on find a professional. And then what you do is you could either look up a specific one. So if you have a name in mind, Senator Cummings, you would just go here to licensee
They
lookup.
have to do it by their own first and last name. It's not their business name.
You can do business name, Or if you only have
Okay.
a license number, or if you have first and last name, you can do any of those. And then, or you can just download a spreadsheet of all of the professionals who are active. So that's
Can
one.
I ask
Yep.
on your SOS main page and on your OPR main page, do you have a big marquee that says this will become mandatory April 1st? Like,
We don't because we simply have to, these are the list of our professions. So we
Okay.
could do that. We do have the poster. We have it pretty bold on the contractor's main site. Unfortunately, they chose the color taupe for our bold box, so it is not eye-catching, but we're working on the website. But we've got all of this here.
Sometimes it's good, it's calming. is
Right.
What I
Well,
would
it's
like.
calming. We don't want you to be calm though. We want you to be excited. So
right.
here we are.
Yeah.
Now let's go to the registry.
Right. So now you can go here. So you can get your poster here. You can look, here's the emergency plumbing link. I think we should clean this up a little bit, but Homeowner Resources has links to CAP, links to find a professional page, the BBB, law enforcement, how to do small claims. So really all the tools are here, and then we've got the map.
So you have a lot of contractors, which is great. Do you have a lot of individual clicks of people accessing the registry and searching for someone?
I think we're gonna need to look into that. So if you click on somebody
Yeah,
here, you'll
let's
see.
do that.
Yeah, I think we've at we will look into that. I think we'd only track it by website access. I'm not sure if we track it by which part of our website, but I can check with our IT staff and get back to you and our website staff.
With respect to the chart of locations, if there is a red mark, what does it mean? Does it mean that there's been an adjudicated complaint, or that the complaint is pending?
I think it's being
What does it
investigated.
mean?
We would only put it up there if it was a conduct decision had been made. So the other tool that folks can use is they can look up. You could go straight to conduct, complaints, and discipline, and you can either file a complaint, but you can also conduct a search. So you could search anybody in here, and you could go to contractors. I don't think we have any yet because we don't, but the only ones that would be up here would be ones that had been adjudicated and found to be found to have been disciplined in a way, suspension or warning or something like that.
Not here in the search at this point.
Okay.
How long does it take, or do you anticipate it taking to adjudicate a complaint?
It depends. So there's several tools we have. If there's like an immediate need, we have something called summary suspension, which we would bring so the investigators do their job. They'll do a report. They'll get together with our prosecutors. We have 4 prosecutors, and we have caseworkers, and we have a member of the profession, and they staff it, and they say, well, member of the profession, is this egregious? Does this occur? Most of the time, if it's clearly egregious, diversion when it comes to nurses, or somebody's just disappeared with a $10,000 check, then they might not staff that team, and they would just go ahead and file charges. They could do it either, we're going to file charges, you can continue to practice until this gets set for a hearing a month, 2 months out. You have an opportunity, you have full due process rights. A license is a right. So to take it away, the state needs to go through full due process. So they would have to file charges, have an opportunity for answer. Then there'd be an administrative law officer, typically a retired judge, or definitely a lawyer who would preside over the case. And that could take anywhere from 2 to 3 months. That person would still be allowed to practice during that time. Alternatively, if there's an imminent harm to the public, they can file what are called summary suspension charges. And if those are, they're filed, answered, all that stuff, that can happen within a week or 2. That person would be removed from the practice of the profession pending that ultimate hearing on the merits. So they wouldn't be allowed to practice until there was
right at that point of the emergency suspension. Yes.
I do want to say the answers are a bit lengthy. We only have 2 minutes left, but this is going live April 1st, so if people wanna take more time, I'm sorry, Julie, I need to ask the committee, since you're local, right, your office is close by, you didn't travel. If you wanna spend an additional 10 minutes on this instead, because I do want us to be able to be helpful to you by April 1st, if we start hearing things or seeing things. I wanted to make sure to follow on Senator Brock's question that, if someone chooses a new business alias or changes their name, you have all the tools you need to catch that. I'm sure you do from other licensing processes. So I'm saying nodding head, so you don't have to be too deep about that. Let's please go back to the registry, because we never looked at the actual registry.
And I don't see it, actually.
Okay,
Can I just say, could we have Julie back, because it would be great to have you for a stretch of time.
I'm
full
sorry.
period.
And I do wanna know, we are also looking at some of our lowest paid workers through state programs like home care workers. And we are asking the relevant administrative folks to come in. So, while we are looking generally at who doesn't receive a livable wage in Vermont, we're also trying to look this year at people we pay a lower wage. So maybe we'll combine your testimony with that effort. So I'm sorry, I am sorry. Okay, so let's look at the actual registry.
Right. So with regard to the name, we asked for a corporate name and then we asked for all DBAs. So that's how we identify people. So we would know how you're holding yourself out to the public. To find the registry, you again go to that find a professional, and you would find a professional, and you'd go to a profession roster download. You'd select the profession, which is, I think, under residential contractors, which we should change. And then you could check your type. Are you looking for a business? Are you looking for an individual?
Maybe a commercial contractor? Are they just a contractor?
No, well, elsewhere it was called it was under the C.
And it was in
So when
residential.
I looked for it, I looked under the Cs, and now it's under the Rs.
Yeah,
So
so
just,
we can adjust that in our system.
Which one are you gonna adjust it to?
Residential.
Contractor with, and then we'll change it to contractor and then put residential afterwards, which is what's in our list. I think people
Right,
go
okay,
to
so,
see-
yeah, I think
Yeah.
both should be searchable probably or something.
It should all be searchable.
Yeah.
Both. Absolutely.
So it's residential contractors, then you can choose. We don't have emergency, so I'll also talk to them about taking these off, but you could go individual or business. If you go to the business, then you say download. Can you see
I'm
this?
worried that might confuse people. What if they look on one registry and not another?
So they would need to look on both. We don't have a way to, because they're two different license types, to pull them into one registry. So you could either go individual or you could go business. If you were looking for an individual, or you would look that up. Every business, there's an exemption in the statute that if the business has a license, any of those employees in the business are under that license.
Okay, it just doesn't, like, did you do a user experience check on this? Because
Yeah.
like, what, someone has one person coming to their house. They don't know if there's 3 people in the business. They don't know if it's under that person's name. They don't know, like, how do we make sure if they have to download something, they can get a list of everyone?
But I think, if I'm the resident, I'm the
Mhm.
consumer, and I go into this and I look at it and I see AJ Home Improvements, and if you look at the map and it just gives AJ Home Improvements and Waterbury. It's really up to the person who's interested. If you want to seek out that contractor, you have to do your homework and go in and go to their website, go in the Better Business Bureau, because Lauren said the site has things for people to check on that. So is it really OPR's job to provide all that information? Because I know the contractors have a problem with us even putting their phone numbers and their email addresses on the map.
What?
Yeah.
Don't they want people to contact them? And
We
Again,
cannot
it's-
under, it's under the Public Records Act that's treated as personal information, so it's exempt
Okay,
from
yeah.
disclosure.
That's-
But
we can't
what we tried to do is really put the contracting, what was needed, into the OPR structure that we've built, right? So it's not a perfect fit. It is, it's a licensing structure, but we're hopeful. Can you see the Excel thing that
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, But click on that, you see that there's something there that you're clicking.
But it's,
I see.
it's really hard. I mean, it's
Okay.
like it's searchable by city.
Oh, my
So
lord.
this
Yeah.
is, so then once you get to the Excel spreadsheet,
Yeah.
you can sort it, right? So you
Yeah,
could
but-
say Twin Pines, you could sort it by city.
Okay.
Which,
Yeah, but can't you just put in a region and see what comes up?
Like a county.
Like a county, yeah.
A lot of people don't know
County-
Excel.
I mean, I don't know how to manipulate Excel. That's a
So-
huge ex-
so then what the benefit, that's why with this profession, we did the map, right? So,
Oh,
with the contractors, because of that exact reason, we have, which I think we're talking about putting it more prominently on the front page here.
Oh, yeah.
Right, we've got the map so that you can find your space. And then you can also, I mean, I think if you had a specific name, there's 3 different ways. We're somehow in Pennsylvania. There's 3 different ways to kind of look somebody up, right? If you want to do it by region, you can sort the spreadsheet. You can go and be like, well, I'm over here, so I look over here. Active, I see the name is Joshua Solier, we've got all this information, we've got the location. You'd have to use the internet to Google their contact information because of public records. If you wanted to look somebody up alternatively by their first, so this is our poster, there's QR codes on it. So folks, I think Kevin just handed it out to you. So alternatively, you can go to the licensee lookup and to the find a professional, and you can type in a name or you can type in a business name and see where they are. So let's see, I'm gonna,
while you're doing that, I just want to say we should spend 5 minutes on how to help you spread the word about this. I mean, I worry that what's gonna happen is we're gonna tell people they should now be looking on this for either to find a contractor or to confirm that their contractor is legitimate. And we're gonna get a lot of questions back. So who should we direct those to?
right.
Well, we sent out 23,000 emails
Okay,
to everybody you can imagine as far as it's
Like-
interested.
like
in.
landlords
The
and
maps are out there.
The Contractors Association, the few that we have worked with here are
Okay.
all letting people know.
can you send us a blurb that we can share with our colleagues that says this is becoming, and it can't be something that they have to download, like a paragraph, they might want to put in a newsletter or something that says this is going to become the law. And here is the website that you use, and here's who you contact if you have questions. That would help us.
And I would really like just one more slower direction on how to
Okay.
get to the map, because it's
Yeah.
not intuitive.
Yes, please do change that, which that would happen.
Can you tell me?
I will tell you
Yeah,
that Lauren Hibbert is aware, and
Okay.
we're all aware that the OPR website needs a new facelift.
Oh, boy, does it ever.
It's a matter of money, so
right,
Yeah.
we need to have somebody.
Does
Okay, but-
does Agency of Digital Services have you on their list, or they don't?
Yes, they are.
we
Yes,
just
but
don't need-
we're also
President.
not part of I mean, we work with ADS, but we're not part of we are a separate entity, so we have a different budgeting. So the Secretary of State's independently elected and.
Okay, we're gonna go here. Okay, now.
Please
I-
do a lot of user experience when you
Yeah.
do your facelift, like get regular people of all ages to try and find this stuff.
Yeah, you can use us. This committee can
Yeah.
give you a lot of feedback. Or FGO, or House GovOps. All of them.
I had an appliance procurement come in my house this past week, and I was talking about, I said, are you registered? And he goes, why do I need to be registered? And I said, well, if you're taking contracts, you're doing home improvements.
Mm.
He says, well, I have a separate side business with a partner that we do residential contracting. And I said, well, what size are for your contracts? And he goes, 20, 30, 100,000. I said, you need to be registered. And I explained to him what's going on. He goes,
Yeah.
we'll get on that.
I'd be
Great,
surprised if my contractor's registered.
yeah, I hope mine is, but I will tell Pip.
But that's a good tour for the media would be something important to.
Well, what are you guys
Are
doing?
you doing a
press-
media?
Yeah, social media, we're
Are
out
you doing
there.
a press
But
release?
yeah, the real media, like not social media. Okay.
Because we need some
We've
bigger
been on
articles.
the secretary's been on WV.
Yes, there
but everyone
are.
watches
I
the
have-
news.
There's
I have- I send articles to
TV
6
news is
local
still king.
newspapers.
Yeah, but
We have great local newspapers in the Upper Valley and Windsor County.
Okay, so we have 2 minutes left. You're gonna
Yeah.
get us our own way to help you. You're doing a press release to the traditional media outlets. Generally you have some work to do to help it be more navigable for people to get there.
Yeah.
Anything else that people want to know?
How much compliance do you think you have?
At this point, we
no.
have not had any fraud complaints. Nothing's been screened in.
No, I'm sorry, compliance of registering. Do you think the vast majority of folks are ready?
It's really hard to determine because prior to this, there was no way to identify. Part of the benefit of this is that we know who's out there, so we'll be able to send communications in times of COVID or flooding, et cetera. But we really have no
Right.
idea to know who's out there, which is why
Every law
we cast such a broad net.
Huge.
I'm sure you might have a guess.
Right. Yes, so we're gonna wrap up.
Okay.
I do just wanna say, I think it's scary for people still when you say, are you registered, right? Like, people,
To do what? Register to
right,
what?
people might have criminal backgrounds, they might not have full documentation, like, so I think we need to be sensitive
Right.
to sharing that there's no penalty to register, there's no, like,
Your
you're
criminal
not being
background is
caught,
not
like,
check, I mean,
right.
none of that is checked. You're
How
kind of
are
like
you
the best
So
thing.
because there is this big penalty if you're not registered, I imagine if someone says, oh, I didn't know in the next 6 months, there's some kind of grace period where you're
Oh,
taking their word for it.
Absolutely.
That was the last year. So,
That was,
Yeah.
okay,
Because we
So-
passed this in 20 or 21. When did we finally?
we asked in 2022, it's went live April 1st, 2023. We've done extensive media outreach, extensive presentations. We've done we've emailed 23,000.
last year, if someone wasn't on the registry and you contacted them, did you give them a warning?
We didn't, yeah, we just said there was no consequence. So what it is unprofessional or unauthorized conduct, and nobody was charged. So if somebody was, if found out, we did what Kevin would do, would say, you should really get registered because April 1st, you might be subject to these penalties of 2024. So we've had that whole year of outreach and, press releases and engagement.
Well, why don't we check in with you after the launch, but you're going to get us some stuff in between. I do think Senator Clarkson has a good point.
I've had a couple of questions about that, and
So, I mean,
That's
this
just it's not a good thing to
This
hand out
is so
to people.
confusing because it should be, drop dead date is 24. This it says April 1st, 2023, which is like old news.
it has the bottom.
But it's down at the bottom. So
Why?
it
Yeah.
needs to be up
Change
here.
that,
You
please.
need to.
That doesn't make any sense.
Right. Or it's a little confusing.
It's extremely confusing.
Okay.
It's extremely.
I'll
confusing.
still use it at my town meeting.
I wish you would change it.
We
but
did
for-
send these out to all the towns too, by the way, all the town clerks.
Oh,
They have.
Can you get us a new one that says 2024?
Oh,
They were
that's
not
what's in
required until April 1st, 2024. So that's not accurate.
No, this.
The law
this-
says they're obligated to register
law
on
is
April. We ju-
But they would not face a penalty until,
2020.
so people could look at that and say, I had someone who wasn't on the registry and they're subject to a $10,000 penalty. This is not a good flyer. Period. You're a lawyer. I don't like this. I'm just really concerned.
Yeah.
Please change it to 2024 before we send it out.
It's already
I
been
just-
sent out, so we will
Yeah,
change it if you need it.
I think it just
I'll
needs
talk to you.
clarity.
Yeah.
Or you can put in parentheses, there was no penalty, but now you need to register.
Well, it just needs to be clear. As of April 1st, 2024, this is what's happening.
Right.
Because this looks
You
like.
don't want the news story to be this rollout's really confusing.
Okay,
You don't, and we see that all the time in state government. So
Yeah.
thank you so much. We'll check in after the April 1st, 2024 deadline for this change.
And I will not distribute that at my company.
Yeah, I really would
But you
like
can
an
have your
updated
parent-
flyer in our newsletter.
But they know where to go, you know where to go, you tell people.
That's true.
Kind of.
If somebody
Because you
asks
could
me,
just make an announcement.
well, I know more. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.